Well, welcome back to Agribusiness with Dr. G. I'm making this video for my agricultural policy class, but I'm putting it out on YouTube in case anybody in the world wants to see it. Who knows, maybe there's someone out there who would like to learn about this. Maybe they're taking a class somewhere else and my perspective on how it works might help them. A quick note about the technology that I'm using an iPad with a Bluetooth connection to this special pen, and this pen's got a sensor on the end of it, and that sensor is able to pick up a pattern on this special paper and able to record it onto the iPad screen. The audio in the previous videos was subpar. I was not personally happy with the way it sounded, so I have invested in a microphone. I use my own personal money, not my job. My university did not pay for it. And I've gone and purchased a high quality microphone. It's about a $300 microphone, and I hope that it works a whole lot better than the internal microphone on the iPad. So we'll see how it goes. I'll know after I get it recorded and uploaded. And if it's really that bad, I probably won't even upload it. So let's just jump right into this. We've got a producer surplus and a consumer surplus that we've learned about. We've learned about the change in producer surplus and the change in consumer surplus. And we've learned the basics of a couple of different policies that we can use to try to attempt to get a higher market price for farmers. And that is the goal of these policies, is to help these farmers out. That's the notion here. Most of these policies are focused on grain producers. This is our corn policy, our wheat policy, soybeans, cotton, these kind of things. There aren't very many policies like this that focus on livestock production. So let's start off like we always do. We always start off by drawing a market diagram. Like so. Now let me see if I can reposition. Yes, I can reposition. And we're going to label the market diagram with a Q and a P. We always try to label things properly. And I'm going to do one more label that I haven't been doing in my previous videos, and I'm going to name the market. So the name of the market we're studying goes up here. So this is the corn market. And like any market, we're going to have a demand curve. And we're going to have a supply curve. And where the supply and demand curve meet, that is our equilibrium. And we're going to label that price PE for the equilibrium price. Sorry about that not showing up well. It's off in the corner of the paper. That's a P. And here we have the equilibrium quantity QE. And here's the setup. Someone somewhere has decided that the price of corn is too low, that farmers should be receiving a higher price for their crop. And whoever it is who made that decision said, what we're going to do is we're going to create a thing called a non-recourse marketing loan. So I'm going to abbreviate that NRML, non-recourse marketing loan. And I explained that before. The basic idea here is that the farmer needs money when the crop is harvested because of cash flow reasons, because of storage reasons, so they're going to sell their crop at harvest when the price is low. And this is a marketing loan. We're basically going to loan the farmer money so they can better market their crop. That's kind of the way this is designed to work. And what we're going to tell the farmer is we're going to loan you a certain amount of dollars for every bushel of corn, and we're going to call the amount we'll loan you per bushel the loan rate. So here we have PL, that is the loan rate, or the price you get based on the money that you've borrowed, basically. So you can go out and borrow PL multiplied times the amount of corn that you grew. Now, practically the way that's implemented is the farmer has some amount they're estimated to have grown, or we're going to use a county level average or something. So it may not be what the farmer actually grew, but we're going to guarantee the farmer that they're going to get that price PL. And we're going to take PL, and we're going to take a dotted line all the way out to the supply curve. We're going to get to the supply curve, we're going to draw a dotted line down, and we're going to call that point right there QS. So this is the quantity that is supplied when the farmer observes that loan rate and says, hey, I know I can get that for my crop, so I'm going to follow the law of supply, which says that when the price goes up, the producer wants to make more stuff, and the farmer produces more. They would produce QE, now they're going to produce QS. Now the demand curve, we've got to consider the people buying this product. Now with corn, it's probably a livestock producer that's going to feed the corn to their cattle or their pigs or their chickens. And where the demand curve crosses that loan price, PL, We're going to draw a dotted line straight down. We're going to label that QD. And this is the problem. The problem is that the difference between QD and QS is a surplus. Something has to be done with that surplus. Maybe we can destroy it. I don't know. There's tons of things we could do with it. But the logic behind this is that the farmer goes out and sells their crop or attempts to sell their crop, and if they can't get PL out in the open market for their crop, the government will buy up their crop from them. And they do that by letting the farmer default on the loan. It's a non-recourse marketing loan. A loan with recourse is something like the loan on your car, where if you don't make the payment, they'll auction the car off at a repo auction and come after you for the difference. This non-recourse marketing loan, the government basically just buys up the corn at PL, doesn't come after the farmer for the difference. That's the basic concept here. And the end result is that the government's going to have to purchase a lot of corn and end up storing it for our farmers. Let's do some welfare analysis. Let me change the color of the pen here. And what we want to do is we want to find the change in the producer surplus. Well, the change in producer surplus is going to be a trapezoid. It's going to be this area here. The height of the trapezoid is going to be the difference between the two prices, PL and PE. PE would be the before price, PL is the after price. And the length of the top of the trapezoid is this distance here, which is the quantity supplied. And the length of the bottom of the trapezoid is this distance here, which is the equilibrium quantity. And the other boundary of the trapezoid is the supply curve. So this trapezoid that I've got here in green is what we're looking for. And what I want to point out to you is that this green trapezoid is a positive number. It is a gain. How do we know it's a gain? This is simple. The whole purpose of the policy was to help farmers out, meaning when the policy is implemented, farmers will be better off. And if they're not, you kind of botch the policy. That's the way to think about this. So it ought to be a gain. If it's not, that's weird. It shouldn't have worked out that way. Now, the other thing to remember is that PL, which is the second price in this case, the price after the policy changed, is higher than the equilibrium price. So the farmer is getting more money for their crop. When you get more money for your crop, that makes you happy. You've got a gain in producer surplus. All right, good. So the change in producer surplus is that trapezoid there. Now what I want to do is switch colors, and I want to talk about our consumers for a second. And never forget that the consumers for corn, it's either going to be consumed for an agricultural use or an industrial use. This is field corn. This is not sweet corn like you grow in your garden and you might buy at Kroger. This is going to be used to make cornmeal. This is going to be used as an animal feed. It's going to be used to make ethanol, that kind of thing. And so to find the change in the consumer surplus, we look for a trapezoid, and the height of that trapezoid is the difference between the two prices, PL and PE. And the length of the top of the trapezoid goes all the way out to the demand curve. The length of the bottom of the trapezoid goes all the way out to the equilibrium, and the trapezoid is bounded by the demand curve. And that green area is a negative. Well, how do I know it's a negative? Here's how. The price went up. The people buying corn are now paying more for it. That makes them worse off. So the green area is a gain, and the blue area is a loss. And here's what I want you to notice. Notice this triangle right here. In this triangle, the gain and the loss do not overlap. Compare it to this trapezoid here. In this trapezoid here, you've got overlapping green and blue. So you've got two different colors. One color is a gain, one color is a loss, and they overlap each other. This area right here where the consumer surplus partially overlaps with the producer surplus, they offset each other. So that area highlighted in red zeroes out. And An area that has a positive and a negative, you add them together, and the positive and the negative zero right out. So that area just disappears. The area that's left over, the area in yellow, is a gain to our society. So this right here, the yellow area, is our change in our welfare, and it is going to be a positive number. So what basically has happened here is that we have made somebody better off. And in the process, we made somebody else worse off. We made the farmer growing corn better off. We made the farmer buying corn to feed to their livestock worse off. And that is not a Pareto improvement. That goes against this Pareto Optimum concept. We help somebody, but we hurt somebody else. And that's kind of important to kind of remember. And that's always important whenever we look at a policy. Every time we have a policy, we have winners, we have losers. Policies almost always creates a group who win and a group that loses. It's very difficult to devise some kind of policy that doesn't in effect pick winners and pick losers. And in this case, we said that ethanol producers are going to be losers. Now, we haven't used a policy like this in a very, very long time, so it's not the ethanol producers we're thinking of now that are going to make ethanol to burn in a car. We're thinking about people who are making ethanol to put in a barrel and turn into whiskey. So whiskey makers won't like this because they're paying more for their corn. Cattle farmers should have a problem with this because they're paying more for the corn they feed their cattle. Pig farmers, chicken farmers, they're not going to like this because they're paying more for these things. There's plenty of corn, it's amply abundant, but the livestock producer is losing in this scenario. And the eventual consumer that's going to eat the meat or use the corn syrup or whatever the case may be is going to end up losing out in this scenario in exchange for our corn farmers winning in this scenario. Another concept we have to remember is the concept of the compensation principle. We talked about this before. We said if the winners win such a large amount that we could in theory tax them and then cut a check to the losers to reimburse the losers for what they lost, and if the winners are still ahead, then the policy is a net gain. And that's what this is. We could take the overlapping, the red area, and just take that away from the corn growers and give it away to the corn users, and the corn growers will still have the yellow area. They'll still have a step forward in a positive direction. So we could use the compensation principle to argue that this policy is a net gain to our society, that the change in welfare is positive because of the change that we've made. Okay? Hold that thought for a minute. There's one more thing we have to keep in mind. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip the page and I'm going to redraw the diagram. And you can watch me redraw it if you like. And this video has been going on for quite some time. I don't want these to be too long, so I'm going to cut it right here. And we're going to pick up the next part of this video in the next video. I'll see you there.